cut out of solid rock, and as it happens, they make a perfect kite flyway. They lead to gun emplacements. The island has always been a sort of stationary, camouflaged battleship defending the harbour. There's an old prison too, and lots of different kinds of birds, but mainly kites. For me, all this couldn't be better. I could live at home in one of the world's biggest cities and come out every day to a wild native forest and film one of the world's most magnificent birds of prey. There is a problem, though. It's not so much a problem for me. I'll be finished with this film before long. But for the kites, for the island. When you think about it, it's probably about the worst problem an island, as an island, can have. It's not going to be an island for much longer. It's growing, and the channel is shrinking. When I first started this project, the work was just starting too. And about the time I'm finished, it'll be finished. What they're doing is filling in between here and Kowloon. Hong Kong is growing like mad all the time and needs land, so it makes it. Reclaims it, they say, as though there'd been land there before somehow. So, for the first time, Stonecutters is going to be part of the mainland, of China, of Asia. What will happen to the kites and the other birds here, no one knows. They say they're going to keep it more or less as it is, wild-ish. But who could predict? What will happen to a wild landscape that used to be used mainly to hide a military base? I suppose one way of looking at it is that I was just in the nick of time. No place in the world could offer quite this access to black kite nests. Hong Kong's a pretty good place for a wildlife cameraman to work from. You can get to assignments anywhere around the Pacific. And for me, there's this island. Strange that nobody else ever thought of filming here. All I have to do is get out of my own bed in the morning and catch the ferry to Stonecutters. And I could be deep in any forest, except that any forest wouldn't have so many kites. I wonder if kites in other places would tolerate me the way these do. I've known these chicks since they were inside their eggs. I feel like their parent myself, almost. The real parents are as wary as you'd expect them to be. But I can't help believing that they all sense I'm here in this hide. And sitting alone in a hide all day, you have to think about something. I'm fascinated, for instance, by that plastic the female brought to the nest. Why did she pick it up? What was she seeing? What was her day like? Imagine being able to see Hong Kong the way she sees it. What's a skyscraper to her but a source of thermals, a thing that causes upwellings of warm air, a way of getting a free lift? She'd see parks and trees as little green patches of easy-to-find food. If she could only realize that people see Hong Kong a bit that way too. One of the great places in the world to get things, to shop. People come from everywhere just to forage here. Hong Kong, the most important city in Asia, maybe the most important on the Pacific Rim, as they call it. But to a black kite, it's mainly a landscape of cliffs and valleys and good places to feed and find things for the nest. To a Black Kite, what is the famous fragrant harbour but another source of things that humans throw away? Chucked out from the famous Star Ferry, maybe. Or even the not-so-famous ferry that I ride to Stonecutters every day. Or from the boats that still manage to pull fish out of the world's busiest harbour. She's a better fisherman than any human. Her eyes are better than radar. But the main thing the fragrant harbour is for her, I suppose, is the moat around the world's most desirable black kite nesting area. She flies there, and I have to take the ferry. For her, it's a perfect place to bring up a family. A great foraging area and a central, safe, natural nesting area. By black kite standards, this must be utopia. And all the time I'm thinking about my good luck, Stonecutters gets closer to Kowloon. I'm making a natural history film about the black kites of this island, but by the time I'm finished, it won't even be an island. As for the kites, who knows what'll happen when people can walk across from Kowloon. But in this city, progress almost means making land out of water. Everybody, of course. They've got their McDonald's and their high-rises and their cars and their expensive clothes. But they also think of themselves as the last of the old China. For instance, that Fisherman's Festival I went to last month, it's still celebrated where it always has been, on what used to be the dockside. But now there's reclaimed land everywhere, and the fishing boats are about a mile away. Culturally, the dock has stayed put. They're wonderful people here for making great changes and no changes at the same time. And that's fine. But the problem is, and it's a problem for the kites too, as Hong Kong gets bigger, the harbour gets smaller. And as there's less water, there's more pollution. I mean, the only safe place to swim on Stonecutters now is the pool. The harbour has a fragrance, all right. There's a side to the reclamation that's even worse than losing the island. At least I think so. And there are a lot of other people in Hong Kong who worry about it. It's a matter of too much flushing and no flushing. When the channel's finally closed, what happens to all the sewage that used to wash through it? Well, where the kites used to fish, there's now going to be a gigantic sewage works. They're putting in the pipes, all right, but the people in charge keep changing their minds about it. They don't see any need to worry, of course, about how it'll affect my birds. I'll tell you, I worry about my kites eating polluted fish more than I worry about Stonecutters being connected to the mainland. Kites may thrive around humans, but only up to a point. They can't survive poisoning. No animal can, not even rats, not us. If there's poison in the food chain, it gets to us too. But there are some people working on the problem. David Melville of the Worldwide Fund for Nature comes out to Stonecutters to ring the chicks. That way he can keep track of the individuals, and the changes in the kite population can actually tell us something about the health of the human population, about the health of Hong Kong as a whole. And that's certainly being assaulted from all angles. At Mai Po, a nature reserve up in the New Territories, pollution comes from the bay between Hong Kong and China, because China's changing fast too. An international fence runs through the marshes. Like all the other fences, it'll probably come down in 1997. What'll happen to Mai Po and its birds then? It'll still have pollution, but will it still have protection? Who knows? There is hope. There are still islands in the colony that aren't even inhabited. Maybe the kites will end up taking them over. Of course, it's the inhabited parts that people think about when they think about the Chinese reclaiming the place. They're concerned about this huge, opulent city, this monument capitalism being turned over to the world's last great communist country. That worry doesn't seem to have done much to the psychology of Hong Kong itself, though. If anything, it's working harder than ever. Growth here is more than 5%. Any country would envy that. From the really crowded parts of Kowloon to the most capitalist-looking building of all things, the Bank of China, Hong Kong's got this momentum. It's hard to imagine that any kind of political change is going to stop Hong Kong from being, for instance, one of the Pacific Rim's biggest importers of tropical timber, which means that this is where a lot of the Southeast Asian rainforests are ending up. Most of the timber is used in building, in making Hong Kong bigger, in growing. A lot of it is just shuttering for shaping concrete. It'll be thrown away. Of course, there's plenty of worry about 1997 and what the Chinese will do, but are they going to put an end to this prosperity, to a city like this? I don't see how. People are concerned about democratic principles, and they need to be. But industry? Capitalism? Are all these multinationals suddenly going to relocate? Where? Hong Kong is money. It's progress. It could go into the 21st century as the most progressive city in the world. The Chinese aren't going to throw that away. Why, the biggest and most opulent-looking building of all is the Bank of China. What more is there to say? Except that it also creates the city's finest aerial lift, so all the kites head for it to get maximum altitude. It's an extraordinary building. When Britain won Hong Kong in the Opium Wars 150 years ago, Lord Palmerston called it a barren island with hardly a house on it. Since then, there's been nothing but progress. And up, on and on. But to where? To what? When a kite rides the air currents, it stays on them as long as it can, goes up as far as it can go up, and then it stops, and alights somewhere. People, though, don't ever seem to alight. They just keep soaring up. reproducing, getting richer, getting bigger, adding land, building buildings, going places, making things, making progress. That's progress that's spreading across the water and taking in Stonecutters Island, the world's greatest kite roost. Stonecutters and Kowloon are almost touching now. This is all part, of course, of an even more enormous piece of progress, £13 billion worth. This new link to the island is going to support a container terminal. The container terminal is going to be part of a huge new transport and shipping complex, and all that is really part of the world's largest engineering project, the new airport at Chep Lap Kok. Stonecutters is getting off lightly. Poor Chep Lap Kok is being levelled. The whole top of the island is being cut off and used to fill in other bits of the harbour, for roads and for more container terminals. The land for Stonecutters' connection came from Chep Lap Kok. Hong Kong needs a new airport of some kind, no doubt about that. Right now, planes are having to come in over the rooftops of the most heavily populated place on Earth. But honestly, Stonecutters itself is going to become a bigger military base with helicopters. I guess I'm prejudiced. Sometimes I can only think about how crowded the skies are going to be for my kites, especially for the young ones, fledgling now. What will happen to them? I've been with them more than their parents have, and I feel like it's my nest they're leaving. I'll never see what happens to them. I've got all the film I need now, and when they fly away, I'm finished. May 29th, 1992. So long, birds. So long, birds, and so long, Stonecutters. So long, ferry. Pretty soon, people will go to Stonecutters on the bus. What, oh, what are the Chinese getting? The world's most futuristic city, for sure, complete with the great symbolic bank. China will be lucky if it's not the place that's taken over. Every winter, the black kites will keep flying down from China, though, with luck. There'll be a lot more people coming down from China, too. More people. It's almost an ideal. But what about the extra pollution? What about Stonecutters, then? What will China, with its terrible conservation record, do to it? Just remember, back when I started, Stonecutters was a miraculous wild island in the middle of a busy city. It's now August the 20th, 1992. As of this month, it's Stonecutters Point. Great. One of the first things that happened after they closed the channel was a gigantic stinking fish die-off, and nobody in authority seemed to care very much. Well, the new governor has tried to get the people of Hong Kong more interested in conserving what nature they've got left, and that's good. But it's a little late for Stonecutters or Chep Lap Kok or any of the other places that have been sacrificed for the airport. Whatever China does, it won't be anything that Hong Kong hasn't started. And if someday these common black kites disappear from the skies, will anybody notice or care? Maybe it is a small problem. After all, there's an enormous hostile country back there, and now it's coming to get us. As sure as Stonecutters, Hong Kong will stop being an island. And will it keep any natural beauty? And if it doesn't, whose fault will that be? China's? Hong Kong's? Communism's? Democracy's? All people everywhere seem to agree on one thing. Nothing beats growth.
嗰次小爆炸，天人話